Hi there everyone, Matt here. I hope you're well. Today we're going to be looking at Microsoft 365 CoPilot and what you and your business needs to do in order to be ready for when it drops. It's not automatically going to just appear in your tenant, so please do make sure that you watch the video. I'll be going through live some of the things that you need to configure, such as licensing and updates, and talk a bit about the privacy and security concerns that some people appear to have around CoPilot and Microsoft's wider AI technology. So without further ado, I'm going to make myself a little bit smaller and share my screen, and let's do that now. So I've got a little bit of PowerPoint here that we're going to have to run through, and some live demonstration stuff that we'll get to in just a second. So how to be ready for the drop in M365 CoPilot. So your organization needs to hit certain prerequisites in order to get CoPilot when it lands. You need some network optimization, and that relates to the Microsoft Networking Best Practices or Taxonomy Guide. Your update channel for the M365 apps needs to be correct, and you have to have the correct licenses assigned in order to be able to leverage CoPilot. In order to make the best out of it, your permissions and content management should also follow your own internal best practices, and I'll come on to that in a little bit. So let's first talk a little bit about licensing. So in order to leverage CoPilot, you're going to need a Microsoft 365 E3 or E5 license, and potentially Microsoft 365 Business Premium, or M365 Business Premium, but that is yet to be confirmed. So first things first, to check your licenses, what you need to do is you need to head over to the M365 Admin Center, and then you need to go to Billing, and then underneath Billing, go to Licenses. If you have Business Premium, E3 or E5 with assigned in here, that means that you will be eligible for CoPilot. Now, Microsoft haven't announced whether or not this will be bundled, but I suspect that it's going to be an additional license. So you're going to need to assign CoPilot licenses to users, is my thinking. So in order to assign these licenses, you've got a few options. You can either assign them manually in the admin center here, and I won't go through that because that's simple, or you can assign them via group-based licensing in Azure Active Directory. So to do that, head over to Azure AD, Entra ID now, and then go to Groups, and then All Groups. And then what I've done here is I have created a group called License Assignment Demo. If I click into that group, it's currently empty, and then go to Licenses just here. You can then click this Assignments button up the top, and then you can assign any of the available licenses that are there in your tenant. What this means is that when this license is assigned, or when a user is a member of this group, the license that you've selected will become assigned. You can also individually take service plans away from the license if you want to. So it's a really good way of restricting down what users can and can't do in a particular package of licenses. So let's just head back to our PowerPoint deck. So that covers off the licensing fairly standard. You can assign licenses via PowerShell as well, but I won't go over that because it's a bit tedious and unnecessary. Group-based licensing is fine for 95% of organizations. So let's talk a little bit about networking, and we're going to refresh our memory on M365 networking best practices here. So on the diagram, you can see here that there's a complicated network. This looks mostly to be based around a lot of remote working, and this kind of topology I'd expect to be operating a zero trust model and using modern management for endpoints such as Intune. But you can see in each of the offices or locations, so you've got a head office here, branch office here, and then some individual workers all using local ISP breakouts. There's no centralized network, traffic filtering, proxy, etc., controlling all the traffic and forcing the traffic to go into one destination before then going to M365. What Microsoft is saying is that with CoPilot, you're going to have a pretty bad time if you decide to try and force all of the traffic to a particular region or through a particular region or route and centralize all of that. The best practice is to make sure that each network is breaking out locally via an internet service provider rather than using a consolidated network that all breaks out from one location or a centralized location. So some other best practices that we need to bear in mind, avoid network hairpins. So again, avoid going out down to a centralized traffic inspection point and then back out to the open internet. That's That's not good. That's going to cause delays and going to cause poor performance. If you've got any proxies, ensure that the Microsoft 365 URLs and IP addresses that are in their best practice document are whitelisted and that proxy is bypassed. That could be a proxy on the client, such as iBoss, or it could be a centralized proxy, which would again lead back to our hairpin routing that we want to avoid. And once again, just another example, make sure that you break out locally. Don't break out via a centralized point. Just to reaffirm, CoPilot is going to rely on reading data from users' regions and writing to that region. So if you're forcing the network traffic or manipulating the network traffic in a particular way, it is going to degrade performance. It is going to potentially affect also your, if you're a global organization, your data sovereignty and where the data is being written to. By default, the data tries to be written where the user's region is. So do not break out over a centralized location. If you're doing that, try and figure out a way not to do it, or maybe this isn't for you. But have a look at the M365 guides and best practices. It's got a whole bunch of different URLs and IP addresses and canonical names that you need to whitelist or optimize traffic. There's a big table here. If it's allowed, then that means that it just needs to be allowed, and it doesn't matter if it's optimized or not. If it's default, then it should be partly optimized. And if you've got this optimized required here, then you need to be bypassing things like antivirus, firewall, and deep traffic inspection. There's obviously nothing for me to really give you as a live demo or guide with that in particular, because everyone's networking situation is going to be different. So in terms of update channel, in order to leverage CoPilot when it drops, we need to make sure that we're either on the current channel or the monthly enterprise update channel for our M365 product suite. So in order to set that, you've got a few different options, and that depends on how you manage your endpoints. If you're in a traditional Active Directory domain with Azure AD Connect, then you might be using group policy to manage your endpoints, in which case you need to head over to group policy configuration and then change your update channel in there appropriately. If you have a very small setup and you've perhaps let users download and install their own software from the M365 portal, then you can manage that from the portal in the organization settings. So to do that, we just need to head over to the org settings. So in the M365 Admin Center, scroll down to settings on the left-hand side, go to org settings, and then find Microsoft 365 installation options. Click there. And once you get into there, you can see you've got the feature updates and which channel you want to select for your users. Do note, this will only affect people that have installed M365 themselves from the portal. This will not affect the other clients. Just bear that in mind. So if someone has gone to portal.office.com and clicked install apps here, those are the users that will affect. Okay. So another couple of options that we have got is that we can use an Intune administrative template if we're using Intune to manage our clients. So in order to do that, we need to head over to the Intune console, endpoint.microsoft.com. We go to devices and then Windows devices and then configuration profiles. And you can see here, I've just created an Office Updates configuration profile. If we click into there, we can then see that we have some configuration settings way down the bottom here. And those two are the current channel name, which is the current channel, and then enable automatic updates. So we just need to set the update channel and automatic updates parameter, and that will effectively make sure that the devices update their Office installation. I know it says Microsoft Office 2016. It does still apply to Microsoft 365. It's just the name in the registry. The other way that you can manage this is through the Office deployment tool as well. I don't really recommend this one, but the Office deployment tool is typically just for getting the software out there. If you want to do that, you can download the Office deployment tool. It will give you a XML file example and the exe required in order to deploy. Let's just have a quick look at what that looks like. So you get this setup exe and you get the various XML examples. And then when we break that XML down, let's just make this a little bit bigger. You can see here in the configuration when you deploy, you can add the client edition and the update channel that you want, along with things like product ID and other parameters. There's a whole list of these. If you want to go and learn a little bit more about those, then I recommend reading the TechNet guidance on how to deploy M365. So let's just get rid of that and move on. So security, privacy, and data concerns. Then this is a big one for a lot of people. I've spoken to quite a few people out and about now about CoPilot and some of the things that they're worried about. And a lot of the things that they're worried about are: is my data my data? Am I training Microsoft's artificial intelligence? How is ChatGPT leveraging what I'm doing? And it's not. Okay, so this is completely separate and standalone. What happens is Microsoft deploy a CoPilot into your Azure instance effectively, and that is the engine room for all of the responses in your tenant. That is then connected to the Graph API to then connect all of your information to CoPilot. CoPilot then makes calls via Graph in order to access your information when you prompt it and ask it stuff. So to confirm, your data does not train CoPilot. Because it is in your Azure instance and it is your version of the tool, your data is not used to train CoPilot. OpenAI's public ChatGPT service is not used either. There are no calls made out to the open internet from your M365 tenant. Everything stays within your universe. No data will be written outside the user's home region. What does that mean? That means that if a user is using CoPilot to generate content, no data will be written outside of their region that you have specified in M365. So that little location field that you've got for users could be quite important if you are a global organization. So make sure that's set correctly, and that will avoid any GDPR or other data sovereignty hiccups. Microsoft will not claim ownership of the content created by CoPilot. This means that the content created by CoPilot, all of the prompting, everything that you've done, everything that you've got it to generate, that is your content. It belongs in your tenant. It's yours. Microsoft does not claim any ownership of that. And finally, CoPilot respects permissions in content created in your M365 tenant. What I mean by that is that CoPilot will effectively, if you've got a deny permission on a file, CoPilot won't then go and read information from that file and stream it back into you. It's not going to be like a backdoor way of accessing stuff that a user shouldn't be able to access. So that is the end of the slide deck. Hopefully you found it useful. I certainly enjoyed giving the presentation. Let's just move on and then do a little wrap up. So hopefully you now have everything that you need to know in order to get CoPilot live in your tenant on day one when it releases. Just to reiterate, this is going to be a game-changing technology for people, right? This is going to be immense. It's going to have all of your data. It's going to have all the rich context that you've been building up in your organization over years, and it's going to start to generate some really, really, really cool stuff. So when it comes along, enable it. Be ready for it. Make sure that you're giving your users the best opportunity to use the new technology and embrace it. Don't be fearful of it. It is going to genuinely change the way we work forever. I hope you've enjoyed watching this, and I hope that you now feel a little bit more ready and prepared. If you're a business owner, this might not have necessarily been for you. If you're an administrator, hopefully you feel like you've got enough information. If you've got any questions, please do give me a comment and I will try and answer. If you want more of this kind of content, hit the follow button. I release regular content updates 2-3 times a week on LinkedIn. All right, until next time, see you then. Bye.